of the Capital Area College Access Network. And we are a community collaborative that's dedicated to increasing college attainment across our region. We serve both Ingham and Eaton counties. And we do a lot of our work in high schools. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute with our college advisors, working to increase college readiness, participation, and then of course completion. And we have partners in obviously K-12, higher education, various nonprofit organizations, some government partners, business, and other funders in the community. So we have a wide range of partners that we work with to try and increase college attainment. Before we jump too far in, I need to tell you my personal story and journey a little bit, because I want you to know that I have been in your shoes. So this is my son, Ben. He is a college graduate, graduated 2 years ago now from Kettering University in Flint. But he had a struggle like most students do that have a disability. He was born with some health issues. About age 3, he developed seizures. And over the next couple of years, we continued to try and figure out what was going on with him. We learned that he had a lot of food allergies, but he also had sensory integration disorder. And ultimately, when he hit school, he was diagnosed with ADD. This was long before there was a lot of discussion about people being on the spectrum. So this is what the diagnosis was when he was in school. So throughout the years, Ben had a lot of different accommodations. He had double time on tests. He could take some of his tests verbally. He certainly had adjusted assignments. And by the time we hit senior year, he was doing pretty well, but he needed to make sure that those accommodations were available to him as he transitioned to college. He originally had a 504, I forgot to say that. And then as time went on, we had the IEP. So senior year, we met with our transition team. He did a revised assessment, and we spelled out the accommodations that he needed for college. And as I mentioned, he went to Kettering. If you're not familiar with Kettering, it's primarily a engineering school. My son's very interested in engineering, and he turned 18 the day after I moved him in to Kettering. So that day, he and I ran down to the health office, which is where the disability services were at Kettering. And I said, this is the last day that I can legally talk to you without my son's permission. So I'm going to talk to you. And we got the paperwork so that, you know, I could actually, he could sign off and give me consent to talk with them if need be. But more importantly, I wanted him to meet the transition staff there and to get himself established and set an appointment for himself to meet with the team. So he did that, but what he didn't realize, and as many of you will come to realize, he didn't want help initially. He thought he could try and do it on his own. That's pretty typical of that age to, you know, not want to have everybody telling him what to do anymore. So about 3 weeks in, he decided he actually needed to go back down and set up tutoring and make sure that his accommodations were all set. He struggled in college, had some challenges, even with the extra time. Taking tests are a challenge. He's now in grad school, and it's still a challenge, and he still has access to his IEP in grad school. But he's incredibly persistent, and I'm very proud of him that he's been able to be as successful as he is. He was working prior to the pandemic, but he works in the auto industry, and as you can well imagine, things aren't going so great right now. So he did lose his job at the beginning of the year, but decided to start grad school. So anyway, he's an example of how you can take those learning disabilities and some health disabilities and actually take that IEP and use it in college. And I know everybody's journey is going to be very different. So you know, while we have a good success story, you know, it's something that I think everybody needs to be aware of, that it's going to be your own journey for you and your family and your student. I should clarify before we go too much farther that we use the term college and post-secondary education pretty interchangeably. So I will refer to college generically to be meaning 2-year associate's degrees, 4-year bachelor's degrees. We also work with students to help them pursue certificates or credentials. I guess my logo cut off credential there. We don't directly serve students that want to go into the military, but we will make referrals to our military colleagues to help students who might be interested in navigating that process. We do work with students who might be interested in going into AmeriCorps, which is the National Community Service program similar to the Peace Corps. We actually employ or hire a lot of young people to serve as AmeriCorps members in the work that we do. And then lastly, we will support young people who are interested in going into apprenticeship programs, whether that be through union training centers or through Lansing Community College, which has a tremendous vocational and technical program there that is aligned with apprenticeship programs. So as I continue to talk, just want you to know that post-secondary education is any type of education beyond high school where you are seeking some type of degree or certification. You might want to know, besides my personal interest in this, why KFCAN cares about students with differing abilities in college attainment. And I think it's important just to talk briefly about some of the national data, and I know we're working here in the region to try and localize that data more, but college enrollment for students with disabilities is very limited, unfortunately. About 54% of students say that they plan to attend a 2- or 4-year degree program, and 43% plan to attend a vocational program. Yet, as you can see a little bit further down, only 59% of students with disabilities who attend college do not graduate. So that's a majority of those young people who say they're going to go don't actually follow through on their final intention to complete for one reason or another. And what was striking to me when I was doing some of my research was that 17% of students take advantage of the assistance available to them to go to college. So we have a long ways to go to educate students and families about what all of those resources are. And that's really why I'm here today, to be able to share those resources with all of you. And of course, our ultimate goal as an organization, and certainly as a community, is we want all of our young people to become independent and successful adults. And that includes those with differing abilities. I know you had a lot more presentation previously with the Disability Network about the law, and so I'm not going to go into you know, that, but it's important for people to recognize, of course, the difference between the law that governs K through 12 education and the law that governs higher education. So IDEA is the law that governs our K through 12 services and systems. And that's an entitlement. Every single student is entitled to access a quality education that's individualized for them. But when we get to college, the ADA governs the college program, and that's a civil rights law, and it's about eligibility. So we know that not every student is going to be eligible for post-secondary education. It really requires you to have a diploma in order to move forward with higher education as we've defined that. That's not to say there aren't opportunities for young people to pursue things who don't have a diploma in the higher education realm. You know, in exploration, certainly, and various community programs that are available through colleges and universities. But specifically to earn a diploma in college, you must have a diploma from high school in order to proceed. The other thing that's different, and we'll talk a lot more about this as we go on, is the responsibility. Who does that fall upon? So in K-12, the responsibility is upon the parent and the school to provide that educational experience for the students. When the student is 18 years old, or in the case of students that don't complete until they're 26 in Michigan, it becomes the student's responsibility to navigate that post-secondary process. So when we talk about FERPA and the governance of parents being able to have access to their students' information, that's something that's limited because of the ADA and FERPA working together. Obviously, we want to have success in both K-12 and in higher education, but really the ADA is defining equal access to post-secondary education. So anyway, we won't go through too much more of that, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware of the differences between the two laws and how they affect your students' journey into post-secondary education. As we've already said, when a student turns 18 under FERPA, the right transfers from the parent to the student, and the school is not required to share that information unless the student signs a consent form saying parents have the ability to talk to the staff at the college. And that's everything from faculty members, although, you know, you really don't want to be probably intervening on behalf of your student with a faculty member at the college level. But it certainly is important for their health, for their safety, and in many cases, their financial situation. So for example, when my son was in college, we needed to deal with some financial aid information, and you know, he doesn't have access to our tax information. So we had to have that permission in order to be able to share that information directly with the college and have that conversation rather than our son alone having that conversation. So that's a prime example of how a lot of families use the FERPA law. So the other thing that folks need to recognize is that high school and college is very different. And I don't know, you know, how many students and parents we have on the call today. And I don't know whether or not we have families who your student may be the first in your family to attend college. But it's important to know the difference between the day. So obviously when you're in K-12, you know, your job as a student is go to school every day, right? Between like 7:30 in the morning and 2:30 in the afternoon. College is very different. You probably take 4 to 5 classes during a semester. Each class ranges from 1 to 3 hours, depending upon whether or not you have a lab. You will not have every class every day. Obviously, in both high school and college, you might have quizzes and reports and projects to do all throughout the semester, but most of the time your tests are cumulative tests. Obviously, if you have accommodations, you can use those on tests if you bring your IEP to college, but you're going to take the same test as everybody else. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. Obviously, college is also a lot larger. So if you're used to a small school environment, going to college, you want to find the right match and fit for your student. If you think they're ready for a big school like MSU, great, that's fine. There are lots of ways to have a small experience within the large MSU campus. But, you know, many folks are looking for a smaller environment when you have a disability because you need to be able to navigate that, and navigating with fewer people is easier than navigating with 40,000 people. So let's see. One of the things that I often get asked, and I'm not an expert in this, but I have been doing some research, and I attended a really great conference in the last couple of weeks called the College Autism Summit, is whether or not colleges are offering programs for students who are on the spectrum. And this is a very new field of work in colleges and universities. Most programs around the country are anywhere from 5 to 7 years old. And not every college and university has a specific program for students that are on the spectrum. So, for example, in Michigan, Eastern Michigan University, Northwestern College up in Traverse City, MSU, Hope College, Saginaw Valley, all have programs that are specifically designed to support and assist students that are on the spectrum, okay? But more and more colleges are recognizing that this is an important population to serve, and the needs of that population, while not really that different from everybody else, is more integrated with other, co-occurring situations, whether it be mental health, developmental disabilities, and so forth. So they are really working to try and design programs and services that are going to meet students on the spectrum, particularly as your students continue to get used to having those services in K-12. The colleges have not caught up to that yet. And so hopefully in the next few years, we will have more and more of those services available at multiple colleges and universities, not only here in our region, but also across the state of Michigan. So you have more options to find the best match and fit for your kid. And we'll be happy to talk more about that in the questions at the end. Most of the work that CapCan does is related to actually helping students navigate the college going process. And I just wanted to remind everybody that you have a wonderful team of people through Ingham ISD who support the transition of your students. And that team is available at the school level, but also at the ISD level. So take advantage of those resources that you have available to help your student navigate the process. And the most typical ways that you're doing that as a senior in high school is through the transitional IEP and assessment process. And that happens normally in senior year. Hopefully it's happening now for those of you who have seniors. And if you haven't got that scheduled, make sure you follow up with your special education team to set up that appointment to do that with your student, not for your student, but with your student. That's the time where you discuss the appropriateness of maintaining the current level of accommodations in high school for college. And not everything, as I sort of alluded to, is available in college, but most things like the extra time, reading of tests, assistance with writing, notes, quiet space for taking tests, those kinds of things definitely are available in colleges and universities for accommodations. The other key person in the team, but I want to specifically note that, is the guidance counselor. They're the one that had worked with your student all the way through to assist them with their educational planning. They're doing their educational development plan, which includes their career planning, so you can start to see the alignment between the classes they take in high school and what they might want to do as a career or take as a major in college. So the counselor is really critical to that conversation. So while you would have a meeting with the special ed team, you also need to make sure that your senior is having a meeting with their guidance counselor about their plans. And that is the person that will work with you probably the most on requesting accommodations for taking any entrance exams. Now, obviously the SAT this year is, going to be test optional for many colleges and universities, but certainly if your student has recently taken the exam, and I hope you had the accommodations. If you've got sophomores and juniors coming up, make sure that you request those accommodations like the spring before they would need to, or the fall before they would need to take the test. And that is also true for the AccuPlacer, which is the exam that students would take at Lansing Community College. And then, of course, the counselors will be working with your students to submit the transcripts that go along with any college application. So that's the primary core team of staff at your K-12 building that would support your student. Now, because of the work that we do in the community, we also have college advisors in 9 different high schools in Ingham County. And those college advisors are there to actually help the students specifically navigate the college application process, filling out scholarships, completing financial aid, and then helping with that final decision and taking care of whatever loose ends, paperwork, verification needs to happen before a student enrolls and goes to orientation for the college for the fall after high school graduation. So that college advisor is a full-time AmeriCorps member. They are, in some cases right now, in the building, and then in all cases, they're available virtually to meet one-on-one with students. Plus, they are conducting very regular events, whether it's in, the classroom with like senior seminar classes, or during asynchronous time where a student can schedule an appointment to be able to talk with the college advisor. And then we have many evening events. I know the Wilson Talent Center also has a college advisor. They hosted a financial aid night just this past week for any student in the community who needed help to complete the FAFSA and learn more about the financial aid process. So feel free to reach out to us or your college advisor if you have one in your building directly. Parents can certainly reach out directly to the college advisor, but the students definitely have access to that college advisor and can set up those appointments with them on a regular basis. My colleagues from LCC weren't able to join us today, but they will be joining me in a session we're going to do for the seniors on November 16th. So they'll be able to do a much deeper dive than I will today about the college going process at LCC. But I just wanted to share a few things for you today to talk about our partnership that we have at LCC. So if your student is on track to continue their education beyond high school, and you are thinking that they may not be ready to go off to school yet to Central or Michigan State or Saginaw Valley or whatever, LCC is obviously a great option for your students. They can get some of their basic requirements done, and their math, their English, their social sciences, etc. But we also have a hidden jewel really in this community of great vocational technical programs at LCC, where you can earn certificates, short-term certificates, anything from about 18 months up to a full, 2-year associate's degree program. And there's a lot of wonderful hands-on programs, plus the more traditional, like liberal arts programs that are available through LCC. The other thing that we're going to be doing is offering a chance for your juniors to attend a virtual tour of LCC's West Campus and all the career and technical programs in March. So last year we physically took your juniors to LCC to visit and talk with representatives about the various options there. You may remember, if your kids went, that they got to change a tire, or they made a key ring at the machining stop, or they got to work on the virtual welder. So those are the kinds of programs that are out at West Campus, plus, a high level range of IT programs. So that's what we'll be seeing in March. Anyway, so this is obviously LCC's main website. If you click on admissions or first time student, this will get you started with the LCC application. This is one of the things that the college advisors actually do. It's kind of almost a mandatory activity senior year that every kid applies to LCC. So that's something that we walk through literally page by page. It's not a very hard application. It doesn't require an essay. It does require your student to have their social security number. So parents start practicing the social security number with your students. They have to have a rough idea of what they might be interested in studying, but of course they can change that at any time. It takes 20 minutes max, really, to fill out the LCC application. So that is something, though, that we try to do in the classroom with all of our seniors. All students who have a disability are encouraged, obviously, because of the way that the changes happen between K-12 and college. They're encouraged to visit the Center for Student Access at LCC, which is the division that coordinates all of the disability services at Lansing Community College. We encourage your students to do that prior to starting classes. They can do that as part of their orientation experience at LCC, or they can just schedule an appointment and do a virtual or an in-person appointment when we finally get back to being in person, to meet with one of the advisors in the Student Access Center. And they will work with your student to make sure their IEP is registered essentially within their system. They will make sure to understand what accommodations your student needs. And then they will be responsible for case managing your student to access the other resources that are available within the college. So it's not like high school where you walk into the guidance center and it's a one-stop shop, so to speak. It's really different divisions within any college or university. And this one happens to be called the Center for Student Access. Other colleges and universities might refer to it as the Disability Office. But just know that every college and university has an office that supports students who have a disability. So once you chat with them, they will remind your student that it's up to your student to self-declare that they have a disability in every single class. It's not like every faculty member is going to get an email saying, Joe Smith has, this disability and you need to make sure that they have their accommodations. That's not how it works in college. In college, the student has to say to their individual faculty member, I have a diagnosed disability. I've been to the Center for Student Access. I'm eligible for these accommodations. Can we please work together to make that happen? That's a big, big change. And it's uncomfortable for any teenager to ask for help. But there's no shame in asking for help. And the sooner you do it, the more likely you are to be successful in college and to obviously use your accommodations appropriately to support you as you move forward through your classes and take your exams. So this is just a screenshot of their page to tell you a little bit about some of the services that they do offer. There is a lot of peer mentoring going on in many of these services. So just know that your students may also be interacting with other students, which is great because it helps them socialize and it helps them, create some rapport with other people that either are studying this or people that are like them. So that's something for you to be aware of. They have lots of wonderful resources, particularly on the disability resources page, if you want to explore that a little bit more. So I always try to give a little bit of advice to students, and this is important for parents to understand that as well. even though you have a disability and even though you may have accommodations, your grades do matter. Colleges and universities look at you know, your grades, particularly now because the SAT and the AccuPlacer, it's test optional. They need to know how successful your student has been in their primary courses in high school in order to make some determinations about what levels that they will be able to take when they get to college. So grades is one way that colleges and universities look at what levels your students are ready for. Waiving classes in a degree or a program is not an option. So as I mentioned, my son was able to, you know, have some different types of things when he was in high school. That's just not an option with majors. Those are nationally recognized accredited programs. So you can't waive certain classes within that. So be aware of that. Secondly, I'll talk more about financial assistance in a minute, but that's something that students and parents need to have some conversations about while you're still in high school. Don't wait to do it when you're dropping your kid off and they don't know how to pay for their books. So they're young adults. It's, you know, time for them to learn about money management. It's time for them to learn about the cost of going to college and their responsibility for their finances. The timelines and process are, you know, usually out there. We talk about that a lot with the students that we work with, what those timelines and deadlines are. But if you don't know, don't be afraid to ask. And make sure that if you need to set up a certain type of process for yourself to stay organized or to take notes, that you work with, you know, the team, either your special ed team in high school or the Student Access Center at college to help you create the system that's going to work best for you, because this will be a change and you're going to need to have to set up new processes. The most important thing that we tell every student is find something that you love to do and pursue it. Okay, so I know parents say, I don't want my kid to be sitting in the basement playing video games their whole life, but you know what? They might be really good on computers. They might have the opportunity to pursue IT. They might have an opportunity to design video games. So if that's something that your student is interested in, there's probably a major for it out there. If they like to work with their hands, if they like to be outside, there's all kinds of programs at Lansing Community College for your students to be able to be hands-on. If your student loves to read, obviously there's a lot of traditional liberal arts programs that are available. If your student is interested in a helping profession, you know, there are lots of opportunities for students, whether it's going into a certified nurse assistance program, sonography, physical therapy. Just know that the qualifications for those kinds of programs probably require a little bit higher level of math and science background. But bottom line, if your student loves something, they're going to be more successful in majoring that in college and happier too. So the other thing that it's important at this point is practice your organizational skills while you're still at home, right? So if you've been relying upon mom or dad to wake you up every morning, it's time to transition and practice setting that alarm and getting yourself up out of bed. My son has the most loud, obnoxious alarm on the planet. It wakes me up many, many mornings, but you know, that's what he's had to do in order to get himself up and going in the morning. Learn how to do your laundry, okay? Learn how to clean up after yourself. Those are all good organizational skills, particularly if your young person decides to go away to school, either live in the dorm or live in an apartment. They need to know how to do some of those, both organizational and life skills. And then lastly, participate in social activities. That's the best way for you to have a good college experience, right? You won't have your friends from high school with you necessarily. You need to put yourself out there. And if that's difficult for your student, and I know that was difficult for my son, we actually had to do social skills training at one point. You know, that's a big step. So practice those things while you're in high school so that you're more prepared to do those things when you're in college. All right, and then probably the most important thing for all of us is letting go. So it's important for our students to practice self-advocacy and communication with you as their adult in their life, with their teachers and instructors. As I said, when they get to college, they have to talk to their professors. So practice while you're in high school doing that. So when you have a question about something, about a test, about, I didn't understand this, you know, encourage your child to make the effort themselves to talk with their teacher or instructor. Obviously work with all of your counselors, with your support team, with the success coach. When you get to college, those people are there to help you. They can give you additional training and support to help you set up the systems and the organizational styles that are going to work for you. Remember what I said, seek out that disability office right away. Make sure you have a copy of your IEP. Physically have a copy of it. You can scan it, email it to yourself, but it's always great to have a copy of it so that you can go through it together when you're meeting with the staff at the counseling office, to be able to figure out what you need. And then lastly, identify a peer or adult mentor, or ask if they have that in a college setting. I know you have that opportunity in many of your high schools for peer-to-peer mentoring. Those kinds of programs are available at the college level as well. I'm going to talk just briefly about FAFSA. If you want to do a deeper dive, we can certainly share with you our full-blown FAFSA workshop information, or you can certainly talk to a college advisor. But every student who goes to college needs to complete the FAFSA form. And I know many parents often say to me, well, we make too much money, so we don't need to fill out the FAFSA. Well, actually, nothing could be further from the truth, because even if you make too much money, you probably are eligible for some kind of money from the institution that you plan to attend, whether it be work study or whether it be grants or scholarships. So every student needs to apply for the FAFSA. So that's free application for federal student aid. And we typically, it opens up on October 1st. We do a big push right now, actually, between November and February. But the deadline is March 1st. And I tell families that it's better to get this done hopefully before the holidays, A, because you don't have to deal with this during the holidays, but B, a lot of the money from the state of Michigan and from the college or university is actually first come, first served money. So if you wait and send in the FAFSA on March 1st, you probably already missed out on the state competitive grant that's available, okay? Or you, if you have students that maybe have family members who were in the police or the military, there are various and sundry scholarships available for them, but they're a limited amount of dollars. And when that runs out, it runs out. So the sooner you get that FAFSA in, the better. FAFSA is something that is used at all accredited post-secondary programs. So if you're going to LCC or MSU, obviously you're gonna fill out the FAFSA. But even if your student's gonna go to Douglas J, they have financial aid available, so they would need to fill that out as well. The other thing for families to know is that both your student and one parent, if you are a two-parent family, need to fill out an FSA ID using your Social Security number. So the student is the one that actually completes the FAFSA. So parents, don't start filling out the FAFSA because it needs to be your student's Social Security number, not your Social Security number. This happens all the time where parents accidentally put in their social security number and then enter their student's name, and it gets all screwed up, and you have to call the federal financial aid office and get it changed. Sometimes you have to send in documents to verify who you are, who you say you are. You don't want to do that. So your student signs up with FSA ID and starts filling out the FAFSA. The parent fills out an FSA ID and signs, electronically signs or authorizes the student to submit that FAFSA. The other thing that is important in the new FAFSA, if you have older students, you might have used the older FAFSA, is that now, because everything's online, you can automatically retrieve, because of the Social Security numbers, retrieve your IRS tax information. And we use the prior year tax information. So obviously families just submitted their 2019 taxes, right? So we're using the 2018 taxes to complete FAFSA right now. Because of the pandemic, we know that family circumstances have changed, right? So like I said, my son was unemployed when he went to fill out the FAFSA. He's now eligible for more resources because he's unemployed. But because we used prior year's taxes, it might have appeared as if he has more money than he actually does. So it's important for you to, follow through on any verification requirements and to physically call the financial aid office of the college or university that you plan to attend to let them know that your circumstances have changed and you need to update the financial information so that you can be eligible for more money. So like I said, if you have more questions about this, come to one of our longer sessions where the actual financial aid staff from our college partners will come and present and explain this in more depth to you. Like I said, we do offer free financial aid support through the college advisors. If you don't have a college advisor at your high school, you can certainly talk to your counselor. But if you have any questions, you can email us at any time at collegequestions@capcan.org, and we will be happy to answer your question or set up a one-on-one appointment to assist you. So do not, I repeat, do not ever pay to have somebody complete the FAFSA for you or fill out a form that requires you to pay. There is a scam out there, which is a .com, that requires you to pay $89 to complete the FAFSA. Don't ever pay a dime for filling out the FAFSA, okay? The other thing that we want you to be aware of is there are a lot of different scholarships out there for different types of disabilities. Very generous people who either themselves struggled or had family members who struggled to access post-secondary education because of a disability have established different funds to be able to help students. So you can see on here, there's a scholarship for students with epilepsy, scholarships for students who are blind, scholarships for students who have learning disabilities. Let's see. There's scholarships for students who have autism. So anyway, if your student does have a disability, besides the FAFSA, you also want to check out these private scholarships and encourage them and support them to apply for these scholarships. And obviously your counselor or college advisor can also assist your students in completing these scholarship applications. So don't let free money go, right? Especially right now, we need to make sure that students know that there is money out there to support them. This specifically is the LCC scholarship that's available for students with disabilities, but LCC also has a lot of other scholarships that are available. And the good news is if you apply for, on the LCC website, you fill out one application and that gets you eligible for whatever you may be eligible for in their system. So you can specifically, check off the box for the Genevieve McComber scholarship here, but you may also be eligible for a merit scholarship or a leadership scholarship. and other things at LCC. So just make sure that your students fill that out. That's deadline is January 31st, and it just opened up last week. There may be a few people on the call today that either are young adults or have children that are young adults up to age 25 that graduated already from high school and have not continued to pursue their post-secondary education yet. One of the things that we have is a college and career coach who can meet and do an initial assessment with any young person. And if they're eligible for other services through Michigan Rehab Services or Disability Network, we will refer them directly to those organizations for assistance. But should they not be eligible for other resources, our coach will work with that young person as well. So this goes for whether or not you have a disability or not. But we want to just let people know that there are a lot of young people right now that are unemployed, underemployed, working in, like low wage programs, whether it's at McDonald's or Myers or wherever. And there are opportunities right now through a Futures for Frontliners scholarship to actually go back to get your associate's degree at LCC. And our college and career coach can help you navigate that process. So if you know anybody or you are that person, we're happy to help you. So please feel free to reach out to us for assistance. The last thing I just want to talk about for a second, I sort of alluded to this earlier, is the letting go part. All of us have literally worked our rear ends off as parents to try and get our kids through the K-12 process, right? And we want to make sure that they are going to be equally as successful if they go on to college. But they're adults, and we have to support them as they are adults. So our job shifts from being the direct advocate to helping our students be their own self-advocate. So we become their advisor in that process. We also know that, how you feel about this transition and change as a parent is going to affect your kids. So if you're super stressed out about it, your kid is going to be super stressed out about it. So be aware of that and talk about that with each other. And if you need to talk about that with, the counselor or the other members of the student transition team through your high school or even a private counselor, please reach out and ask for help because it's really important for us to be strong for our kids and then also help them to develop the resilience and the strength that they need to make this transition theirs and be successful. So your relationships are going to change with them, with all the professionals that you come in contact with, and the systems that you encounter are going to be different. Okay, so it's important for us to understand those differences, understand the process, and help our students to navigate those things as they move forward. And we know that obviously, right now things are very stressful and a lot of uncertainty in families. But this is the time for our young people to continue their education. There just are not the jobs out there right now that they can easily move into without some continued post-secondary education in our community. Even with a degree, that doesn't mean you're recession-proof right now. So our advice to students is don't take a gap year, continue with your education. There's funding available for them to continue their education. And we are here to help you navigate that process. So that's my soapbox for the day. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I have some questions for you. Hi, Michelle. I was writing down some questions that I was receiving in the chat.
Awesome, thank you.
So one of the questions I wrote down was, if the student takes a gap year, so takes a year off, and then comes back to school after a year, are they still eligible to receive accommodations when they come back to school?
Yes, but it's critical that the student completes that transitional IEP the senior year of high school, and then it's on file back at the K-12 school. So, and then you obviously want to have a copy of that at home. So yes, that's always possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Another person just wanted to comment and say how positive their experience has been so far at Grand Valley with their child.
Awesome. Awesome. That's really good to know. Appreciate that.
And I will say from personal experience, receiving my master's at Grand Valley, that my experience there was fantastic as well. Just that there's great people there. And then another question we received was, if you have an IEP in high school, does that automatically qualify you to have a disability once you're in college?
Um, that's a good question. And I think it really is determined on a case by case basis. But if you have all the documentation in order and you had a revised assessment by, a certified psychologist or other medical professional, then yes, you should be able to, take most of those accommodations forward with the caveat, like I said, of, you can't substitute classes and things like that.
Perfect. Awesome. We have one more question, but I'm forwarding that to somebody else because I think that's more appropriate. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I thank all of our folks who have been here today. It's been fantastic and informative. We have some resources out on our website that I would like to share as well. So I'm going to quickly share my screen so I can share those out to folks, just as a reminder of how to get to those. Nope. So I need you to stop sharing your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And while you're working on that, if people would please, Kelly dropped in a sign-in sheet in the chat box. If you scroll up a bit, there's a Google Doc to a link from Kelly's Sweethouse. If you would sign in for us, that would be wonderful. Then we can capture your email address and we can send you information from today's presentations. Thank you. Sorry, Greg. Thank you.
That's all right. So on Ingham ISD's website, inghamisd.org, over here on the left-hand side is the Virtual Transition Expo free webinar. So if we click there, all the way down here, there are a ton of resources that are really well organized. You can get to this through your web browser. You can get to this from your phone. Connect with our community partners that will help you get more information to help support young adults with disabilities. So with that, we're going to stop our recording here. I thank everybody here for attending. Please fill out the